The gunshot tore through the evening air before Jake Harrison could even process what was happening. He rolled off his horse, dirt exploding around him as 3 more bullets whipped past his head. The ambush had come from nowhere, just like everything else in his life lately. "Jake!" Emma's voice cut through the chaos. She was already off her mare, rifle in hand, returning fire toward the rocky outcrop where muzzle flashes betrayed their attackers' positions. He scrambled behind a fallen cottonwood, his heart hammering. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a simple ranch hand in Colorado. Now he was running for his life across the Arizona territory with a woman who'd just told him the most terrifying news of his existence. "I'm carrying your child," she'd said that morning, her green eyes locked on his. No tears, no drama, just facts delivered like a weather report. "And the Caldwell gang knows about us. They're coming." The Caldwells. Jake's blood had turned to ice water. He'd testified against them 6 months back after witnessing them murder a federal marshal. The jury had sent 2 of them to hang, but the rest had scattered like cockroaches. Now they wanted revenge, and somehow they'd discovered Emma, discovered what she meant to him. A bullet splintered the log above his head. Jake fired back twice, saw 1 attacker drop. Emma was moving, using the terrain like she'd been born to it. She wasn't some delicate flower, his Emma. She'd grown up hunting with her father in the mountains, could track a deer through a snowstorm and shoot the eye out of a rattlesnake at 20 paces. 4 of them, she called out, jacking another round into her Winchester. Maybe 5. Jake's mind raced. They'd been heading for the border, planning to disappear into Mexico until things cooled down. But the Caldwells had found them too soon, too easily. Someone had talked. Someone always talked when enough money changed hands. Another volley of gunfire erupted. Jake felt something hot graze his shoulder, followed by the wet warmth of blood. He ignored it, focused on the shadow moving between the rocks. He fired once, heard a scream. 3 left, maybe 4. "We can't stay here," Emma said, suddenly beside him. Her face was streaked with dust, but her hands were steady. "They'll circle around, pin us down." "The canyon," Jake said, jerking his head toward the narrow ravine 50 yards to their left. "We get in there. They can only come at us one way." She nodded, already moving. They ran together, bent low, bullets chasing them across the open ground. Jake's lungs burned, his wounded shoulder screaming, but he kept moving. Behind him he could hear the Caldwell gang shouting, their voices filled with the ugly promise of violence. They hit the canyon entrance just as the sun touched the horizon, plunging the world into long shadows. Emma turned, fired 3 times in rapid succession, buying them seconds. They stumbled deeper into the narrow passage, the walls rising steep on either side. "This better have another way out," Emma said, breathing hard. Jake didn't answer, because he honestly didn't know. Part 2. The canyon twisted like a snake's spine, the walls pressing in so tight that Jake could touch both sides if he stretched his arms. Above them, the sky had turned the color of a fresh bruise, purple and angry. Emma moved ahead of him, her rifle ready, every step calculated and careful. "How many bullets you got left?" she asked without turning around. Jake checked his gun belt, his saddlebag. 14 for the rifle. 6 in my pistol. I've got about the same. She paused at a bend in the canyon, peering around the corner. "We need to find high ground or a defensible position. They'll come after us once they work up the nerve." The Caldwell gang wasn't known for bravery, Jake knew. They were ambush killers, the kind who shot men in the back and burned homesteads in the dead of night. But they were also persistent as a bad rash, and they had numbers on their side. There. Emma pointed up ahead where the canyon opened slightly into a small bowl surrounded by rocky shelves. "We can see them coming from up there." They climbed, using natural handholds in the rock face. Jake's shoulder throbbed with each movement, blood soaking through his shirt. Emma noticed, grabbed his arm. "How bad?" she asked. "Just a graze. I'll live." "You better," she said, and there was something fierce in her eyes. "Because I didn't come all this way to raise this baby alone." The words hit him harder than any bullet could. A baby. His baby. The enormity of it threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down, focused on survival. There'd be time for wonder and terror later, assuming they lived through the night. They reached the shelf just as darkness settled in completely. The moon was a thin crescent offering barely enough light to see by. Jake positioned himself behind a boulder, sighting down his rifle toward the canyon entrance. Emma took up position 10 feet to his left, creating a crossfire. "Jake," she said quietly, "whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something." Don't talk like that. Listen to me. I chose this. I chose you. When my father offered to send me east to live with my aunt, to get me away from all this trouble, I said no. I could have been safe in Boston right now, drinking tea and pretending to be civilized. Why didn't you go? Jake asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Because civilized is boring, Emma said. And because I love you, you stubborn fool, even if you did manage to get yourself on the wrong side of the worst gang in 3 territories. Jake wanted to respond, wanted to tell her that he loved her too, that he'd burn down the world to keep her and their child safe, but movement in the canyon below cut him off. 5 shapes materialized from the darkness, moving slow and cautious. The Caldwell gang. Jake recognized the tall, lean silhouette of Danny Caldwell leading them, his brother's killer, the one who'd sworn vengeance from the courthouse steps. I know you're up there, Harrison, Danny called out, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. And I know you got that pretty lady with you. Emma Porter, ain't it? Daughter of old Bill Porter, who used to run the trading post? Jake's finger tightened on the trigger, but he held his fire. Let them come closer. Make every bullet count. Your daddy was a good man, Miss Porter, Danny continued, his voice taking on a mocking tone. Shame about what happened to him. Shame about what's going to happen to you. Emma's rifle cracked before Jake could stop her. The bullet sparked off a rock inches from Danny's head, sending him diving for cover. The other 4 scattered, returning fire wildly. Bullets whined through the darkness, most of them going high. Couldn't help yourself, could you? Jake muttered, but he was already firing too, his shots more measured. He saw one man grab his leg and go down, crawling behind a boulder. The gunfight erupted in earnest then, muzzle flashes lighting up the canyon like lightning strikes. Jake worked his rifle, shooting and levering, shooting and levering. Beside him, Emma was doing the same, her face set in grim determination. A bullet hit the rock next to Jake's head, spraying stone fragments across his cheek. He ducked, changed position, came up firing from a different angle. Below, the Caldwell gang was pinned down, unable to advance but unwilling to retreat. They're going to try to wait us out, Emma said during a lull in the shooting. Starve us down. Then we don't give them the chance, Jake replied. We got maybe 3 hours till moonset. Total darkness. That's when we move. Move where? There's an old prospector's trail on the far side of this canyon. Used to use it when I worked the silver claims up north. It's narrow, barely wide enough for a horse, but it leads down to the river valley. Emma looked at him. And our horses? Left them tied at the canyon mouth. Jake's jaw tightened. We're on foot now. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. We've walked before. They had. When they'd first met, Jake had been stranded after his horse threw a shoe, and Emma had found him walking the trail to town. She'd given him a ride, and they'd talked for 3 hours straight. He'd known then, even before he'd known her name, that she was something special. Another volley of gunfire brought him back to the present. The Caldwell gang was getting brave, trying to move up the canyon. Jake fired twice, drove them back. His ammunition was running low. By his count, he had maybe 8 rounds left. The hours crawled by. Jake and Emma took turns keeping watch, conserving their bullets, waiting for the moon to set. Below, the gang kept up sporadic fire, probing for weaknesses. Danny's voice would occasionally ring out, making threats, promising terrible things. Jake ignored it all. He'd heard worse in the war back when he was barely old enough to shave. Men said all kinds of things when they were trying to break your spirit. The trick was not to listen. Finally, the moon touched the western horizon and winked out. Darkness fell like a curtain. Now, Jake whispered. They moved like ghosts, leaving their positions, crawling along the rock shelf toward the far end of the canyon bowl. Jake's shoulder screamed with every movement, but he bit down on the pain, kept going. Emma was right behind him, her breathing steady and controlled. They found the prospector's trail exactly where Jake remembered it, a narrow track carved into the canyon wall that switched back down toward the valley below. It was treacherous in the dark, loose stones threatening to betray them with every step. Behind them, gunfire erupted as the Caldwell gang realized they'd moved. Bullets spanged off rocks, but the shooters were firing blind now, wasting ammunition. Jake and Emma descended into the unknown, leaving the chaos behind them, heading toward a future neither of them could see but both were willing to fight for. Part 3, the trail was barely visible even in daylight. In the pitch darkness, it was little more than a suicide run, carved into crumbling rock. Jake felt his way forward, his boots sending loose stones skittering into the void below. Behind him, Emma's breathing stayed controlled, but he could hear the strain in it. "How much further?" she whispered. "Half mile, maybe less." Jake paused, listening. Above them, he could hear shouting. The Caldwell gang had figured out they'd escaped, or trying to find the trail. They won't follow in the dark. Too dangerous. Then they'll wait for dawn and come after us with fresh horses. Emma stated it as fact, not a question. She understood the mathematics of pursuit as well as he did. They kept moving, inch by careful inch. Jake's hand found a piece of old rope some long-dead prospector had strung along the worst section. It was frayed and ancient, but it held, as he used it to guide himself around a particularly treacherous switchback. Then Emma gasped behind him. Jake spun, reaching back just in time to grab her wrist as the trail gave way beneath her feet. Rocks tumbled into darkness, taking several seconds before the clatter of impact echoed up from below. Emma hung suspended, her free hand scrabbling for purchase on the cliff face. "I've got you," Jake said through gritted teeth. His wounded shoulder felt like it was tearing apart, but he held on, pulling her toward him. Emma got her boots back on solid ground, pressed herself against the rock wall, breathing hard. "Thanks," she managed. "Can't have you falling." "Who else would shoot straight enough to keep me alive?" She laughed, a short, sharp sound that held more stress than humor. "Let's keep moving before I change my mind about this whole adventure." They reached the valley floor as the first gray light of false dawn touched the eastern sky. Jake's legs were shaking from exertion, and his shoulder had bled through the makeshift bandage Emma had tied around it hours ago. But they were down, they were alive, and they had maybe 2 hours before the Caldwell gang could navigate the same trail. "The river's a mile west," Jake said, orienting himself by the shapes of the distant mountains. "If we can reach it, we can follow it south. There's a town called Copper Creek about 15 miles downstream. 15 miles on foot with no food, no water, and 5 killers on our trail." Emma checked her rifle, counted her remaining bullets. "I've had worse Tuesdays." Despite everything, Jake smiled. This was why he loved her. Most women would be in hysterics by now, and he wouldn't have blamed them. Emma just kept moving forward, kept solving the next problem. They walked fast across the scrubland, the desert coming alive around them as the sun climbed. Rabbits bounded through the sagebrush. A coyote watched them from a distant rise, then melted away into the landscape. Jake's throat was already dry, his lips cracking. He tried not to think about water. They reached the river by mid-morning. It was running low this time of year, barely 3 feet deep in most places, but it was wet and cool and tasted like salvation. They drank deeply, filled their canteens, then started following it south. "Tell me about Copper Creek," Emma said as they walked. "What kind of town is it?" "Mining town, mostly played out now. But there's a good sheriff there, man, named Pete Collins. He's honest, which is rare enough these days. He'll help us get to the federal marshals in Tucson." "And after that?" Emma's hand drifted unconsciously to her stomach, which didn't show yet but soon would. "After that, we disappear," Jake said. "There's still wild country out there. Places where the law is whatever you make it. We find a valley somewhere, build a cabin, raise our kid away from all this. Sounds lonely, sounds safe." Emma was quiet for a moment. "My father used to say that safety was just another word for slow dying, that the only way to really live was to stand your ground and fight for what mattered. Your father also got himself killed standing his ground against 6 drunk miners who wanted to rob his trading post," Jake pointed out gently. "True," Emma admitted. "But he died on his feet, defending what was his. There's honor in that." "There's also death in that. I'd rather you and our baby lived." They walked in silence for a while, following the river's meandering course. The sun climbed higher, turning the world into a furnace. Jake's shirt was soaked with sweat and blood. He felt dizzy, probably from blood loss, but he kept putting one foot in front of the other. Around noon, Emma grabbed his arm, pulled him down behind a cluster of rocks. She pointed upstream. Jake looked and felt his stomach drop. 5 riders were following the river, moving at a steady trot. The Caldwell gang had horses again, had probably picked them up from a ranch or stolen them from some unlucky traveler. They were maybe 2 miles back, but closing fast. "We can't outrun them," Emma said, stating the obvious. Jake scanned their surroundings. The river ran through relatively flat terrain here, offering little cover. But ahead, maybe a quarter mile, the valley narrowed into a small gorge where the water had cut through harder rock. It wasn't much, but it was something. "We make a stand in the gorge," he said. "Force them to come at us in a narrow front. Even the odds a bit." Even the odds, Emma repeated. 5 against 2 is still long odds, Jake. You got a better idea? She thought for a moment, then shook her head. Let's go make the Cowboys earn it. They ran, abandoning any pretense of stealth. Speed was all that mattered now. Behind them, a shout went up as the gang spotted them. Gunfire cracked, bullets kicking up dirt, but they were still out of effective range. Jake and Emma reached the gorge with maybe a minute to spare. The walls rose 15 feet on either side, gray stone worn smooth by centuries of water. The river filled most of the narrow passage, leaving only a thin strip of bank on one side. It was a choke point, just like Jake had hoped. You take the left, I'll take the right, Emma said, already moving into position. Make them come through single file if we can. Jake positioned himself behind a large boulder that had fallen from the gorge wall at some point in the distant past. He had 4 bullets left in his rifle, 6 in his pistol. Emma had about the same, 20 rounds between them to stop 5 determined killers. The mathematics didn't look good. The riders appeared at the gorge entrance, Danny Caldwell in the lead. They pulled up short when they saw the terrain, recognizing the trap for what it was. Danny dismounted, studied the gorge, then looked directly at where Jake was hiding. This is stupid, Harrison, he called out. You're just delaying the inevitable. Throw out your guns and I promise we'll make it quick for you. The lady, too. Your promises aren't worth much, Danny, Jake shouted back, considering you promised my brother you'd look after his widow when he died. Instead, you robbed her and burned her house down. Your brother was weak, Danny spat. Just like you. Emma's rifle cracked. The bullet took Danny's hat clean off his head. Next one goes between your eyes, she called out. Keep talking and find out how weak we are. The gang scattered, taking cover. Jake could see them conferring, making plans. They'd try to flank through the gorge, use their numbers to overwhelm the defensive position. It's what he would do. Minutes passed. The sun beat down mercilessly. Jake's mouth was dry again despite the water they'd drunk earlier. His shoulder throbbed in time with his heartbeat, and dark spots were starting to dance at the edges of his vision. Then the attack came, fast and coordinated. 2 men rushed the gorge entrance on foot while the others laid down covering fire. Jake shot the first one in the chest, watched him spin and fall into the river. Emma got the second one in the leg, sending him sprawling. But the covering fire was intense, bullets ricocheting off the rocks, filling the air with deadly fragments. Jake ducked down, felt something hot slice across his ribs. Another wound to add to the collection. 3 left, Emma called out, plus the one I wounded. The wounded man was crawling back toward the entrance, leaving a trail of blood. Danny and the remaining 2 gang members had gone silent, probably trying to figure out their next move. Jake checked his ammunition. 2 bullets in the rifle. 6 in the pistol. This was going to come down to a close-range fight, and he was already hurt and exhausted. Emma, he said quietly, if this goes bad, you run. Follow the river to Copper Creek. Sheriff Collins will protect you. No, she said flatly. For the baby. She looked at him then, and her eyes were blazing. I already told you, Jake Harrison. I chose this. I chose you. We stand together or we fall together. Those are the only options. Before Jake could argue, the second assault came. This time, they used a different tactic. 1 man came straight up the middle, firing rapidly, while the other 2 scrambled up the gorge walls, trying to get above and behind them. Jake shot the man coming straight at them, his rifle clicking empty. He dropped it, pulled his pistol, swung toward the climbers. Emma was already engaging the one on her side, her shots precise and measured. Jake's target reached the top of the gorge wall, started to aim down at them. Jake fired 3 times, saw the man jerk and tumble backward out of sight. Then Danny Caldwell was there, coming over the opposite wall with a gun in each hand, his face twisted with rage and triumph. Time seemed to slow down. Part 4 Jake's pistol swung toward Danny Caldwell, even as Danny's guns came level with Emma's position. 3 shots rang out simultaneously, the reports echoing off the gorge walls like thunder. Jake felt a sledgehammer impact to his left side, spinning him around. He hit the ground hard, his pistol flying from his hand. Through blurred vision, he saw Emma still standing, saw Danny stagger backward with blood spreading across his shirt. Jake! Emma's voice seemed to come from very far away. Danny was still on his feet, still trying to raise his guns. Emma's rifle cracked once more, and this time Danny went down and stayed down, sliding slowly down the gorge wall to crumple at the base. Emma was beside Jake instantly, her hands probing his side. He couldn't feel much of anything there, which was probably bad. Her face was pale, her jaw set in that determined way he knew so well. How bad? He managed to ask. Bad enough, she said. She tore strips from her shirt, wadded them against the wound. But I've seen worse. You're not dying today, you understand me? We've got too much to do. Jake wanted to laugh, but it came out as a cough that sent fresh waves of pain through his torso. Above them, he could hear voices. The remaining gang members, trying to decide if they wanted to press the attack or cut their losses. Emma made the decision for them. She grabbed Jake's pistol, stood up, and fired all 3 remaining rounds up at the gorge rim. "Next man I see dies," she screamed. "Danny's dead. The rest of you want to join him for $20 and a grudge? Come on, then." Silence. Then the sound of boots scrambling, horses being mounted, hoofbeats fading into the distance. "They're running," Emma said. She sank down beside Jake, and for the first time her hands were shaking. "They're actually running." "You scared them," Jake said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, thready and weak. "Scared me too, if I'm being honest." "Good," Emma said. She was crying now, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. "You should be scared. Because if you die and leave me alone with this baby, I swear I'll find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself." Jake reached up with his good arm, touched her face. "Not planning on dying." "Got too much to live for." "Damn right you do." She kissed him hard, then went back to working on his wounds. "We need to get you to Copper Creek, to a doctor." 15 miles, Jake said. "Can't walk that. Then I'll carry you if I have to." Emma looked around, saw Danny's horse still standing nearby, reins trailing. The animal had stayed when its rider fell, well-trained or just confused. "Can you ride?" "Can I breathe?" Jake countered. Both heard about the same. Emma helped him to his feet, and the world spun wildly. He would have fallen if she hadn't been supporting him. Together, they made it to the horse. Getting Jake into the saddle took 10 minutes and more willpower than he thought he had left, but eventually he was up, slumped forward over the horse's neck. Emma mounted behind him, reaching around to gather the reins. Her arms bracketed him, holding him in place. "Just stay conscious," she said into his ear. "Talk to me. Tell me about this valley you want to find." Jake tried to focus. Words came slowly, but they came. "Green," he said, "with a stream. Mountains all around. We'll build the cabin on high ground, good drainage, barn for horses, maybe some chickens." "I like chickens," Emma said, guiding the horse along the river. "What else?" "You'll want a garden. Your mother taught you about growing things." Jake's mind was wandering, memories mixing with hopes and dreams. "The baby can play by the stream. We'll teach them to fish." "Him or her?" Emma asked. "Does it matter?" "Not one bit." Emma's voice was fierce. "Boy or girl, they're going to be strong. Going to know how to stand up for themselves. Going to know they're loved." The horse plodded on through the afternoon heat. Jake drifted in and out of consciousness, Emma's voice anchoring him each time he started to slip away. She told him stories about growing up at the trading post, about her father teaching her to shoot, about the time she'd tracked a mountain lion for 2 days just to prove she could. "Never caught it," she said, "but I found where it denned. Watched it with her cubs for a whole afternoon. My father was furious when I finally came home, thought I'd gotten lost or killed. But he was proud too. I could see it in his eyes." "He'd be proud now," Jake murmured, "seeing how strong you are." "Strong enough for both of us today," Emma replied. "But tomorrow you're going to have to pull your weight again." The sun was low on the horizon when buildings finally appeared in the distance. Copper Creek was a ramshackle collection of structures clustered around an old mining operation. Most of the mines had played out years ago, but enough people had stayed to keep the town alive, if barely. Emma guided the horse straight to the sheriff's office. Pete Collins was sitting on the porch, cleaning a rifle. He looked up as they approached, and his weathered face registered shock. "Harrison? Emma Porter?" He was on his feet instantly. "What in the name of all that's holy happened to you two?" "Caldwell gang," Emma said as Pete helped her ease Jake down from the horse.
"Danny's dead. The rest ran."
"Danny Caldwell's dead?" Pete's eyes widened. "Federal marshals have been hunting that snake for 2 years." "Well, they can stop looking," Emma said. "Where's the doctor?" "Doc Anderson's house, 3 buildings down." Pete was already calling for help, people emerging from nearby buildings. "Someone get the doc! Tell him it's urgent." They carried Jake to the doctor's house, laid him on a table. Doc Anderson was an old man with steady hands and kind eyes. He took one look at Jake's wounds and started issuing orders. "Everyone out except the young lady," he said. "I need space to work. Pete, send someone to fetch my surgical kit from the office." Emma held Jake's hand while the doctor worked, cleaning wounds, probing for the bullet. Jake screamed once, a raw sound that tore from somewhere deep inside him. Emma's grip tightened, her other hand stroking his hair. "Almost done," the doctor said. "The bullet went clean through, missed anything vital by about an inch. You're a lucky man, son." "Lucky?" Jake repeated. His mind felt clearer now, the doctor having given him something for the pain. That's one word for it. The doctor finished stitching, wrapped Jake's torso in clean bandages. "You need rest. No riding, no fighting, no foolishness for at least 2 weeks. Preferably a month." "We don't have a month," Emma said. "The rest of the Caldwell gang might come back." "Let them come," Pete Collins said from the doorway. "I've already sent word to the federal marshals in Tucson. With Danny dead and you two as witnesses, they'll want to round up the rest of the gang. I can keep you safe here until the marshals arrive." Emma looked at Jake, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. They'd run far enough. Time to stand still for a while. "All right," Emma said. "But we'll need a room. Somewhere private." Pete grinned. "I think we can arrange that. There's a boarding house run by Mrs. Kidd Patterson. She keeps a clean establishment, asks no questions." "Perfect," Emma said. Then she looked at the doctor. "One more thing. I'm going to need to see you professionally in about 8 months. The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Congratulations," he said warmly. Then he looked at Jake. "Better heal up fast, young man. You're about to have a whole new set of responsibilities." That night, in a clean room with real beds and a door that locked, Emma and Jake lay together in the darkness. His wounds ached, but the pain was distant, manageable. Emma's head rested on his good shoulder, her hand over his heart. "We made it," she said softly. "We did," Jake agreed. "Now what?" Jake thought about the valley he'd described, the cabin they'd build, the child they'd raise. "Now we live," he said. "We find that valley, we build our home, and we live." She was quiet for a moment. "Jake? I'm scared."
Of what?
"Of being a mother. Of this baby growing up in a world where people like the Cowboys exist." Jake turned his head to look at her, wincing at the movement. "You faced down 5 killers today. You saved my life. You're going to be an amazing mother. How do you know? Because you care enough to be scared. Because you're strong enough to stand when you have to and smart enough to run when you should. Because you love fiercely and protect what's yours." Jake kissed her forehead. "Our kid is going to be the luckiest child in the territory." Emma smiled in the darkness. "Our kid is going to have a lot to live up to. Parents who took on the Caldwell gang and won? We'll tell them the story someday," Jake said, "when they're old enough to understand. The whole story, every word." Outside, the night was quiet. Copper Creek slept peacefully, unaware of the small miracle happening in Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. 2 people who'd ridden into the unknown together, who'd faced death and won, now planning for a life neither had imagined possible just days before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The marshals would arrive, there would be depositions and testimony, and probably more trouble before everything was settled. But tonight, they had each other, they had hope, and they had a future worth fighting for. Part 5, the federal marshals arrived 3 days later, 2 grim-faced men named Carson and Webb who had been tracking the Caldwell gang across 4 territories. They took statements from Jake and Emma, examined Danny Caldwell's body, and seemed genuinely impressed that 2 people on foot had managed to kill 3 gang members and scatter the rest. "The Bureau's been trying to catch Danny for 18 months, Marshal Carson said, sitting across from Jake in Pete Collins' office. "You did the territory a service, whether you meant to or not." "We meant to survive," Jake said. His wounds were healing well, though he still couldn't move without pain. Everything else was just a bonus. Marshal Webb was more interested in Emma. "You grew up at Porter's Trading Post?" "I did," Emma confirmed. "Your father sold supplies to prospectors and miners." "Good, honest man, from what I hear." "He was," Emma said carefully, wondering where this was going. "The thing is, Miss Porter, your father kept detailed records. Names, dates, transactions." Webb leaned forward, "including several suspicious purchases by members of the Caldwell gang in the months before your father died. Mining equipment that was later used in a series of robberies. Food supplies that showed up at their hideouts." Emma's face hardened. "My father didn't know who they were. He sold to everyone who came through." "I believe that," Webb said quickly. "But those records still exist. They're in a strongbox at the ruins of the trading post, protected by a steel door that survived the fire. We need those records to build our case against the remaining gang members." "So go get 'em," Emma said. We would, except we don't have the combination to the strongbox. Your father was careful about that. Emma closed her eyes. She could see her father's face, hear his voice teaching her the combination on her 16th birthday. In case anything happens to me, he'd said. Everything important is in there, including the deed to the trading post land. It's yours now, Emma. Do with it what you will. I know the combination, she said. Then we need you to come with us, Carson said. It's a 2-day ride from here. We'll keep you safe, get those records, and put the rest of the Caldwell gang behind bars for good. Jake started to protest, but Emma cut him off. I'll go, but Jake comes with me. He's in no condition to ride, Webb objected. Then I don't go either, Emma said flatly. We stay together. That's not negotiable. The marshals looked at each other, then at Pete Collins, who shrugged. You're not going to win this argument, boys. I've known Emma since she was 12. When she sets her mind on something, mountains move out of the way. In the end, they rigged a wagon with cushions and blankets so Jake could ride without reopening his wounds. Emma drove, with the 2 marshals riding alongside and Pete Collins joining them for good measure. They left Copper Creek on a cool morning, heading north toward the ruins of Porter's trading post. The journey took 3 days instead of 2, moving slow for Jake's sake. Emma used the time to think about her father, about the life she'd lived before Jake, about the life growing inside her. She could feel changes already, subtle but unmistakable. Morning sickness that the doctor said would pass, a tenderness in her body that spoke of transformation. What are you thinking about? Jake asked during a rest stop on the 2nd day. Names, Emma said. If it's a boy, I'd like to name him Bill, after my father. And if it's a girl? Emma smiled. I was thinking Caroline. It means strong. I like both, Jake said. He was moving better now, able to walk short distances without assistance. Bill or Caroline Harrison? Good strong name either way. They reached the trading post on the afternoon of the 3rd day. The site was exactly as Emma remembered it from her last visit 2 years ago. The main building was a burned-out shell, blackened timbers reaching toward the sky like broken fingers. But the storage building still stood, its stone walls scorched but intact. The strongbox was right where her father had kept it, in the back corner of the storage room behind a false panel. Emma nodded.